Hey everyone, thank you for joining me today. I wanted to do a video that Mel Soldera did quite a while back, and I'm kind of combining it into another one as well. So this is my struggle to have a baby in addition to my birth story. Sorry about the lighting over here. I'm trying to film with some natural good light, so I have my blinds open and it's just really bright, so I do apologize for that. Also, if the lighting changes, I have two cats down here with me and my son. So there's a few noises in the background and possibly a little light change, so I do apologize. We're just going to jump right in. So in 2017, I had a history of abnormal PAPs. However, they were not abnormal with HPV. Bless you. Goodness. They were not abnormal with HPV. They actually came back abnormal with precancerous cells. So I went from having CIN1 cells, these are abnormal. We need to keep an eye on them, to let's recheck it in 6 months and see what happens. And in 6 months, they were CIN3, which CIN3 is these are definitely precancerous, and we need to remove the area that they were taken from, just to make sure that you don't get cancer. So there were a couple options to have that taken care of. Most clinics will do a LEAP procedure, which uses electricity to cauterize the incision, where they take the abnormal cells from your cervix. Yes. You're so cute. And the one that my doctor had recommended for me was a cold knife cone surgery, where they use a knife and put you under instead to remove the cells. She said the reason being is that I was young enough and I wanted to preserve fertility for in the future. She said that she thought I would have a better chance of being able to get pregnant if I had the cone procedure done instead of the LEAP. I would have slightly less scarring. So we opted for that. I had that taken care of. And then a couple months later, in October of 2017, I married my husband. We'd been dating for 9 years on the day that we got married, so that was pretty exciting. And then in January, when I went in for my recheck, like a repap, to see how everything was doing from the surgery, make sure that I didn't have any more precancerous cells, my doctor asked if I would like to refill my birth control. I had discussed it with my husband before going in. We both agreed not to refill my prescription, considering that I had cells that went from just abnormal to precancerous in such a short time frame. And also the oncologist who did my procedure recommended a hysterectomy at or before age 35. We wanted to start having children early so that we could have a couple years between them. January of 2018 now, I went off of my pills. I had finished up the pack that I had and just went off of them, and we started trying to have a baby. Around March, I still hadn't gotten a period, so I took a test and it was negative. I thought I'd been on the pills for over 10 years. Maybe my body just needed time to get used to it. For a lot of the 10 years that I was on the pill, I was on the one where you would get a cycle only once every 3 months, because as a teenager I had really, really heavy periods. So that was just what worked best for me. I thought maybe my body's used to 3-month-long cycles, and so it will just take, a couple months to happen. Around June of 2018, I still had not gotten a cycle, and so at that point I contacted my OBGYN. She prescribed Provera, which induced a period after taking it for 10 days. And when I came to her office in July, we did an ultrasound to see what exactly was going on, and that was when I was diagnosed with PCOS. In case you don't know what that is, PCOS is polycystic ovarian syndrome. A lot of women who have PCOS do not ovulate on their own. So she gave me a prescription for 4 months worth of Provera and then letrozole. There were a couple different drug options that I was given, and I opted for letrozole. The others were Clomid and metformin. Metformin is a drug for diabetic patients, and it helps women with PCOS who have insulin resistance or higher glucoses. My glucose is always in range, and my A1C is very low, so I didn't think that would be a good option for me. I didn't want to mess anything up with blood sugar. and have trouble there. And then Clomid is actually what my mom took to conceive me because she also had PCOS. And so I know that it works, but it's been found in recent years to have a higher risk of multiples, as well as a lower success rate in women with PCOS making it to a term pregnancy. So I discussed them over with my husband, and we opted for the letrozole. So I took 3 months worth of that. All of them failed, and I was about to call in the final round when I started getting a period on my own again. So I thought, thankfully my body is sorting itself out. I don't need medication. I'm just going to see what happens and not refill that prescription. And I started getting my cycles again in October of 2018. And then around January of 2019, nothing had happened as far as getting pregnant. My cycles were coming, but they were longer. They were about 45 days apart. So I likely was not ovulating on my own. I was able to find out through a secret group for women with PCOS on Facebook who are trying to conceive. In case you don't know, what's great about secret groups is you can find them. The admins have to approve or deny your request to join the group. Nobody can see that you are in the group unless they are also in the group. I had seen from a woman on there that she had been seeing a fertility acupuncturist, so I decided to look that up. In February of 2019, I did start seeing a fertility acupuncturist in my area, and he actually encouraged me to refill my letrozole prescription, and I was kind of the mindset of it didn't work the first few times, it's not going to work this time either, and I need a higher dose. So I had contacted my OBGYN in, I think it was late March, early April of 2019, and I said, I think I just need a higher dose because a lot of the women in this group were on much higher doses than I was, and I thought, maybe this one just does not work for me. So she said that she does not typically give out higher doses than that, and that I should refill my last prescription, take it, and if I wasn't pregnant, to see her, and we would discuss other options. I got a period on April 16th of 2019, and me thinking that my letrozole would not work once again, I failed to call it in time. I was supposed to take it cycle days 3 through 7, and I called it in on cycle day 4. No, I called it in cycle day 3. My pharmacy didn't have it, so I couldn't pick it up until cycle day 4, and so I took it cycle days 5 through 9 instead of 3 through 7, thinking this isn't going to work anyway. Why does it matter if I take it on different days? So fast forward, the day before Mother's Day 2019, I was actually going to a bachelorette party, and I took a pregnancy test. It was negative. I thought, oh yeah, I knew that was coming, so no big deal. I'm going to go out and have fun. I got raging drunk with my friends, like the most drunk I've been in a long, long time, and spent the next day, which was Mother's Day, hungover and just irritated. I was irritated and frustrated because at that point, we had been trying for about a year and a half, and I thought that I would have a baby or at least be pregnant at that point. And since I wasn't, it was just very frustrating. It was very upsetting. Seeing everyone who was a mom being celebrated. Well, we were celebrating my mother-in-law that day, and I was just raging mad. Like, I didn't want to be there, and I couldn't handle anything. And I love my mother-in-law. I get along with her great, so I felt kind of like a jerk. But I was just really depressed at the time. After this bachelorette party, I'm at work, and I'm having some cramping. I thought my period might be coming, whatever, or I really messed up my stomach from all that alcohol. So didn't think anything of it until one of my friends told me she thought that I should retest. And I was mad because I was out of test at home, so I had to go buy another pregnancy test kit. And I'm thinking, here I am spending $10 only to be told what I already know. It's negative. It didn't work once again. So I bought the test, came home, took it, left it on the counter while I was changing out of my scrubs, went and checked it, and I was like, there's actually 2 lines. What the heck? There's 2 lines. But this is a bad test, obviously. Bad test. It's negative. So I used the second test in the kit a couple hours later, and it was also positive. I told my husband that night, and I said, I think it's a bad batch of tests. So the following day at work, since I work in healthcare, a coworker of mine pulled a in-house pregnancy test for me, and we left it by my workstation, and she comes back to see if I checked it, and I said no, because it's negative. And she pulls it out, and she goes, girl, that's flaming positive. Like, this is really positive. And my first question was, did we QC that lot? Is it a good lot? Or is this a bad batch of tests too? Like, there's no way. And she said that it had passed QC, so it was good. We drew my blood levels, and I had to get my blood drawn a couple times just to make sure that it was rising appropriately, which it was. So finally, after a year and a half of trying, I was pregnant. Yay! That is kind of the part about my struggle to have a baby. It's very depressing. You feel very alone. If I were to go into like all of the emotions dealing with that, we would be here for hours, and nobody has time for that. Fast forward through my pregnancy. We're now approaching the end of pregnancy. I was 38 weeks and 3 days pregnant, and consistently throughout my pregnancy, I had to get up between 2:30 and 3:30 in the morning to use the restroom. So that day, it was a Tuesday, I woke up at 3:30, had to go to the bathroom. I come back to bed, and I was actually wide awake. I figure I'll scroll through Facebook or Instagram on my iPad, kind of just something, mindlessly scrolling to make me sleepy, and I'll be able to go back to bed. So I'm scrolling through Instagram, and I had been getting Braxton Hicks contractions for a little while, maybe about a month and a half or so, and none of them had really been that strong. I was laying on my right-hand side, and I remember getting what I thought was a Braxton Hicks contraction, and I go, oh, that one was actually pretty good. That was kind of painful. So I'm going to roll over to my left side because I've heard that left side is better for baby. It's closer to your heart, so it takes a little bit of the pressure off of them, and they're just generally happier towards the end of pregnancy when you lay on your left-hand side. So I rolled over to my left, and less than a minute after I rolled to my left, I feel a pop. And with this pop, there was a gush of fluid. I didn't know at that point what it was. And I remember I looked at the time on my iPad. It said 4:05 a.m. And I was just kind of thinking to myself, I don't know what that was because there was a pop. I was thinking my water probably just broke, or there's something wrong, or I peed myself. Even though I'd just gone to the bathroom, I was thinking maybe I peed myself, I don't know. And so I did what I didn't want to do, but I knew I had to do. I had heard that if your water breaks, it's a clear, odorless fluid, whereas the prenatal vitamins I was taking, I felt like they made my urine stink really, really bad. So I stuck my hand down my pants to see what exactly had happened, and I pulled my hand out, and I was very, very thankful that there was no blood. I was just worried that there was going to be like bright red blood everywhere, which in that case I would think something was really wrong and that I would freak out. So thankfully there was no blood, but it was definitely a clear fluid. So I sniffed it, did the sniff test, and it was odorless. So at that point I realized my water broke. I got up and went to the bathroom, down my pants, and there's like this clear fluid all down my legs with like mucus in it. I realized at that point my water had definitely broken and that we needed to get to the hospital. So I just took off my pajama pants and I grabbed my towel from my shower the night before. It was still on the bathroom floor. So I grabbed my towel, stuffed it between my legs, and waddled back to the bed and just try to wake up my husband. And my husband's a very, very heavy sleeper. And I remember I'm shaking him and I go, babe. And he goes, And I said, I'm not kidding. I'm pretty sure my water just broke. He rolls over, goes, what? Like wide awake. I said, okay, what do I need to do? I had thought that I wasn't going to have him that early, but thankfully I had washed things for our hospital bag and put it all in a pile in our hallway, just in case. So I told him to grab the stuff for the hospital bag, put it in the bag, and that I wanted to shower, which my husband's never going to let me live this down. He said, you're in labor, but you're taking a shower. Whereas for me, it was just kind of, I thought it was gross having all this fluid down my leg, so I wanted to be able to clean that off and not feel so gross before I was about to go in and have a whole gross experience giving birth. I just really quick top in the shower to wash off my legs and, kind of do one last final scrub down. I didn't wash my hair or anything. And I get out of the shower. My husband is calling his mom because while I was in there, I told him, call your mom. Your mom wanted to come with us, and she had left her phone on so that she would hear it if we called her in the middle of the night. So he's called his mom. He has her on speakerphone. I remember her asking me if I was having any contractions, and I said I had a contraction right before it broke, and then one while I was in the shower. But at this point, about 15 minutes had elapsed, and I said they weren't too strong, and they were far apart. They're not regular yet, so I'm not too concerned. I just want to get to the hospital. So we had agreed to go and pick her up from his parents' house. They only live about 5 minutes away. So my husband, poor thing, he's frantically trying to get the hospital bag put together, which he finally did. And he goes outside to start the car and realized it was snowing. We had a couple inches of snow. So he was cleaning off the car from the snow. He grabs the car seat, which I had in our living room ready to go. And I was just kind of standing there collecting my thoughts and realized I needed to call my mom, who lives a few states over, who was planning to fly out that coming Friday. So I called my mom, told her my water broke, we're going to the hospital, contractions aren't regular yet, I've only had like 2, and just get the next flight out when you can. While we were on our way to my in-laws' house, I started getting a couple of contractions just waiting in the car. So I decided, maybe I should start timing these, seeing how far apart they are, because they had started picking up where they were. The best way to describe them is like a kind of stronger period cramp. And since they were picking up in regularity and how long they were lasting, I started timing. So it took us about 10-15 minutes to get to his parents' house. Just because of the snow, we were driving a bit slower. We picked up my mother-in-law, and when we did, she asked how the contractions were and everything. So I just told her, I've started having them regularly, and what I'm tracking on my app is they're lasting a minute to a minute and a half, and they're about 3 to 4 minutes apart. Some of them were actually 2 minutes apart at that time. And I said, but they're not very, very strong yet. They're just kind of like a strong period cramp. We get to the hospital. I remember the lady kind of looked at me like I was crazy when I told her it was my first baby and I was only 38 weeks along, since most first babies you typically go over. So they pulled me in a triage room to check and see if my water had broken, and thankfully I had put a pad in when I got out of the shower to just kind of collect everything, because I figured there was more fluid in there, even though I had lost a lot of it at home. And I remember the nurse looks at the pad, because she had me pull down my pants in this room. Yeah. And she looks at the pad. She goes, your water definitely broke. And she goes, this is a lot of fluid. What time did it break? And I said 4:05, and at this point it was just before 6 in the morning. She said, yeah, we definitely need to admit you. This is a lot of fluid. Got me into the room and had me fill out all of the paperwork, sign all the forms and everything. So at that point, one of the nurses asked if I had a birth plan. So I told the nurse my entire birth plan throughout my entire pregnancy was, I don't care how he gets here, just get him here safely. I don't care if he's fast and natural. I don't care if I'm in agonizing pain and need an epidural. And I don't care if they say, you're not progressing, you need a C-section. Do not care. I just wanted him here safely. And then I added to my birth plan once they made me sign a form, which said you could die during childbirth. So I said, I'm adding to that. I just don't want to die, not today. However, my birth plan did come back to bite me in the butt later on, and we're getting there. So it came back to haunt me though. So when they checked me when I first arrived, I was only at 1 centimeter dilated, but I was 80% effaced. So I was really thin, and they said because I'd had the surgery for abnormal precancerous cells that I had a line of scar tissue on my cervix, and it might take me a while to dilate completely, which I thought, that's fine. No big deal. My OBGYN had warned me of that, but my OBGYN had also warned me it might take me a while to dilate, but once I started going, I was going to go really quick. So I did warn my nurse of that, and she was awesome. She stayed in the room the entire time with me. She was kind of joking with hubby and mother-in-law and I, so it really kind of helped me relax a bit, but my contractions were definitely picking up in intensity, and it was starting to get really uncomfortable. We're like, you have to really focus. Yeah. You have to really focus to breathe through them, and you just, it takes your breath away, and you can't think straight for a minute or two. At one point, I decided to tell the nurse, everyone's going to see it anyway, and I know a lot of women poop during labor anyway, when they're pushing. So I told her, I said, I have to poop, and I'd prefer to do that now before I get any pain meds so that you don't have to clean it up. I work in healthcare, and I want to make your job a little bit easier. I don't want you to have to clean up after me, at least for that. So she checked me just to make sure. She said, if you're dilated beyond a certain point, then I have to come into the bathroom with you to make sure you don't push your poop out and push out your baby at the same time. So she checked. I was between 1 and 2, 1.5 centimeters. So she let me go into the bathroom by myself. I just had to leave the door cracked so that she could come in if needed. And it was kind of awesome because the whole time she's still joking with my husband and my mother-in-law, and they're talking to me through the door, but I was having some pretty intense contractions. So at one point she, comes up to the door and she's like, hey, did you fall in there? Are you okay? And I said, I'm completely fine. I'm done. I'm just waiting for the next contraction to come because they're so close together, and I don't know if I can get up safely. Yeah, I don't know if I could get up safely mid-contraction, so I'm just waiting for that to pass so that I know I have a minute or two to actually get up. So she said that was fine. Do you want to try something different? Do you want to try, leaning against a bar? Do you want a birthing ball? I opted for the birthing ball just to see, and while I was on the ball, it did help kind of relieve some back labor I was experiencing, but it was still pretty painful. And I just remember that at one point I said, I'm going to throw up, and so both her and my husband, I had gotten some vomit bags from work just in case, and her and my husband both threw these vomit bags at me. And I thankfully didn't vomit. I just had a lot of saliva. At that point, though, I realized I needed something for my pain. And I just kind of was leaning onto the bed on this birthing ball, holding the barf bag. And I said to the nurse, what are my options for pain other than an epidural? Because the hospital that I went to, I later found out their policy is you can't have an epidural until you're at least 4 centimeters dilated. And I figured at that point I didn't want to slow down any progress. I'd heard that epidurals can slow down you dilating completely. I didn't want to slow it down. So she said, we can give you, there were 2 medication options. I don't remember the first one, but one of the options was fentanyl. And I opted for the fentanyl because she said it's only in your body for about 2 hours, and it doesn't make the contractions go away. It will just take the edge off because you'll feel like you're really, really drunk, and it just makes it a little more tolerable. She said, your contractions are peaking high enough where you should be dilated to 7 or 8, and you are just stuck. And she said, I bet it's that scar tissue that you have, but if you didn't have scar tissue, you should be at 7 or 8 by now. And so she gave me the fentanyl through my IV. I immediately felt drunk. It was awesome. All of the pain kind of got a little less intense. I was even slurring my speech. And I remember she gave me the fentanyl at about 9:45 in the morning. Around 10, just after 10 in the morning, the charge nurse came in, and the charge nurse asked if she could send my nurse to her break. So I said, yeah, girl, you go take your break. I feel outstanding. We might be here a while anyway. I've got my meds. Life is good. So she said, awesome. I just want to check you one more time before I go on break so that I can tell them where you're at, kind of what the situation is, and that way they know what's going on. So she checked still between 1 and 2. She said I was about 1.5 centimeters. So she goes to her break around 10:15. Shortly after she left, I started feeling my contractions again, and they had picked up in intensity. I remember looking at the clock and thinking a lot of bad words, thinking it's only been 45 minutes, and I was hoping that this would last for the full 2 hours, not just 45 minutes. At that point, the charge nurse came in. She wasn't staying in the room with me. She was just watching my contractions on the big monitor out by the nursing station where she could monitor contractions and my baby's heartbeat. So she comes running back in and she goes, I lost your contractions off my monitor. And I was a little bit confused by that. I didn't know that was possible. So I just asked her, what do you mean? And I said, is my baby okay? She said, no, baby's fine. I still have his heartbeat up there. His heartbeat's normal. She said, your contractions vanished though, so they moved from where we had your monitor. So I need to know where are your contractions. And I told her, I said, well, they've been picking up in intensity and it hurts everywhere at this point. It's hurting all around the front and just all the way to the back. Like my whole midsection was just painful. And it started progressing pretty quickly from there. She said, well, I need to press on your stomach to feel where it is. So you need to tell me when you are having a contraction so that I can feel for it. At that point, it had started to get really close together, and it honestly, it felt like my insides were trying to rip themselves out of me, like I was being ripped apart from the inside out, and it was just all over my midsection. So I had started moaning and groaning, making these terrible sounds that I don't know where they came from in my body, just primal sounds, as she's pressing on my stomach, trying to find where my contractions are. I'm like screaming at this point because it hurt, and she had just left my room door open. She didn't close it. So another nurse comes in. She goes, boy, she must really be feeling those contractions. And this charge nurse says, well, she was at a 1 about 10 minutes ago. Oh, okay, and like walks out of the room. So, well, the other nurse walked out of the room. Sorry, I should clarify that. The other nurse walks out of the room, and the charge nurse is still pressing on my stomach. So at that point, I kind of rolled over because she still couldn't find them. She would stop every now and then to mess with something and then would come back and press on my stomach again. I rolled over to face my husband. I'm like flailing around, rolling on the bed, and I remember telling him, have them knock me out and cut him out because I am in so much pain and I'm only at a 1. I cannot handle this pain. He needs to come out, and he needs to come out now. And while I was on my side, while I was on my side, I felt my body starting to try to push. And so I was squeezing my legs together thinking, there's no way. It's been maybe 15 minutes. And there's no way I'm ready to push. Thankfully, at this point, the nurse is still pressing on my stomach. The on-call doctor from my doctor's office, since she had still left my door open, so I was that woman you could hear screaming down the hallway, he comes running in because he heard me screaming, and he said, I need to know what's going on. You know, he introduced himself, and the nurse says, she was at a 1 about 15 minutes ago, and he said, where is your pain? Where is it now? So I told him, I said, it's moved, it's really low, it's all throughout the front, really low, and I said, I can feel like I'm trying to push, but I'm not far enough to push, so I don't want to tear, because that was my main concern, was I was going to like push when I shouldn't push, and I was going to cause something to be wrong with my son, or I was going to just rip myself to shreds which I didn't want to happen. So this doctor tells me, I need you to roll onto your back, because if you are in this much pain and feeling like you need to push, we really need to see what's happening. So they had to manually flip me onto my back because I couldn't move. My contractions were maybe 30 seconds apart. When I was having them, they were just boom, 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 right on top of each other. So they rolled me on my back, and they pushed my legs up, because this whole time I literally was in so much pain I couldn't move myself. And this nurse still pressing on my stomach, just not thinking anything of it. The doctor checks, and I really wish I could have gotten a picture of her face, because he comes up from checking, he goes, she's completed a 10 and the baby is at station +3, and she needs to push right now. This nurse's face just goes completely pale, all the color drains from her face. She runs out of my room to get another nurse. This doctor says, I'm going to call your doctor and see if we can get her here in time to deliver you, but we're going to get this baby out now. I remember looking at my husband going, what just happened? I'm so confused. I'm in shock. What just happened? My mother-in-law, she's a very calming person and is able to maintain her composure in stressful situations. She comes up to me and she goes, honey, you need to push. And the doctor comes back in. He said, I've called your doctor. She's on her way. She's coming from the clinic, which their clinic is right around the corner from the hospital. You could run there if you wanted to. And he said, she's on her way. She'll be here in 5 minutes. But she told me not to tell you not to push, because that's just mean. So he said, if you want, I can deliver this baby right now. And my poor husband, because the doctor is looking at my husband, because I'd hardly been able to say anything directly to the doctor at this point. And my husband just goes, babe, you need to give him the approval to deliver him now. I really don't think you should wait. So I just remember looking at my husband and screaming, and I said, I'm going to push, and if he comes out, he comes out. I don't care. He tells me to push, and he gave me a really quick, the best way to push is hold your legs up and push into your pain, push into your bottom is what they say, and push into your pain. So at that point, my regular nurse is running back in because she's finally back from break. She said, I had a feeling you would go fast. So she grabs my right leg, tells my husband, Dad, grab the left leg. So he grabs my left leg, puts it up in one of the stirrups. And I remember he doesn't do very well with blood. Anything medical really grosses him out. I later asked him why he did this. He said it's one of those things where your brain tells you not to look, but you can't help it, and you'll look anyway. So he looked and said he saw a bunch of fluid and mucus come out of me. He didn't see any blood. Thankfully, he might have passed out if there was actually blood in it, but he saw a lot of amniotic fluid come out when he grabbed my leg. So my husband is grabbing my leg, and he just goes, hey, Mom, can you get her leg? Can you hold her leg? So my mother-in-law ended up holding my leg. My husband came up by my head and held my hand for the entire time. I think I pushed twice with the doctor who was there, and then my doctor comes in, and I remember seeing her come into the room, throwing the gown on, throwing her gloves on, gets down there, and she goes, how are we doing? Basically taps herself in. I told her, I said, I think I'm having a contraction right now. She said, yeah, you are, and push. So I pushed one time with her, and out he came. They put him right onto my chest as soon as he was out, and that was it. He came out in 3 pushes. I pushed for 4 minutes, is what they said, which is really abnormal for a first-time mom, especially. And all of the nurses who were there while my regular nurse was on break just said, I have never seen someone go from 1 to 10, let alone with the baby at station +3 in 15, 20 minutes. So my son was born at 10:57 in the morning. I had a labor that was just under 7 hours, so I got very lucky with that. Very thankful that I had a fast labor, but like I said, it did come back to bite me in the butt from saying, I don't care if it's natural and fast, because by the point where they told me to push, I was in so much pain that I wanted drugs. So I pushed him out, having only had a little bit of fentanyl, which at that point had worn off. At least the management abilities of it for my pain had worn off. So he came out very, very quickly. But yeah, that is how I had my son, and he's here with me now, so you can probably see him in the reflection, but I'll grab him. So Ryan is now almost 3 months old. He's about 2.5 months old, and he was 6 pounds even, 20 inches even. Yeah, I think you're getting a little fussy. I think you pooped. So he was 6 pounds even, 20 inches even, and he is the love of my life. Yes, he is. And every intensely painful contraction, every single second of labor was worth it. Once you have your baby out, people say it all the time, you immediately forget the pain. Probably because you go from feeling like your insides are being ripped out to so much relief that your baby's actually here. One of the things people do talk about, which I didn't personally experience, is they call it the ring of fire, which is where when you're pushing your baby out and they're crowning, you start tearing so it burns. I don't remember any burning at that point. I think it was because it was all fast. I was in so much shock. It just felt like he was stuck. And so I pushed really hard once they told me to push. But yeah, this is Ryan, and he is the best, most chill baby ever, because he's so chill that all of my other friends who have babies have like really fussy ones, and he is just awesome. So that is my struggle to have a baby and my birth story with this little man. If you have any questions, leave them below or hop to Instagram. I'm way more active on Instagram than I am on YouTube. So I will see you guys later. Thank you for watching.